When I first moved to the Rose City in the late 1980s, Portland was a big city with a small town feel. Portlanders felt lucky to live in such a beautiful area with the mountains, ocean, and desert all within driving distance. Downtown Portland was growing with new development. Light rail was running, and it was a very affordable place to live. I've changed a lot since then, and so has this city. A recent poll shows some people who live in and around Portland are not happy with the changes taking place. The Portland Business Alliance released a survey this past week showing 88% of voters polled say the quality of life in Portland is getting worse. 66% report mistrust of local officials, and 81% say the Portland City Council is ineffective when it comes to providing public services. Those polled say Portland is even worse shape now, and crime and homelessness tops their list. Joining me to discuss the findings of the public opinion poll, Andrew Hohn, CEO and president of the Portland Business Alliance, and John Horvick with DHM Research, which conducted that poll. Gentlemen, thank you, both of you, for coming on the program today. I appreciate it very much.
Thanks for having us.
In 2 or 3 sentences, Andrew, I want to begin with you. How would you describe the poll results?
Well, they're foundationally unnerving to some extent, and I say that in their absolute alignment with the way that people in our region are thinking, and they are being crystalline clear in what the priorities are and what the solutions are. So to some degree, shocking.
John, tell us about some of the principal findings of the survey.
Well, voters are sour probably undersells it, the most frustrated that they've been in the history of DHM's polling in Portland and the region. And like Andrew said, it's very clear what they're upset about. It's persistent challenges with homelessness and increasing concerns about crime, particularly violent crime. I'd say a third would be cost of living and its association with housing affordability. But homelessness and crime is really what's driving the negative attitudes.
Andrew, Portland Business Alliance commissions a poll every year. How are the most recent findings different from previous years?
Sure. So we use this information to truly guide the strategic thinking of our members and how we do our advocacy. But we also do this to make voters in the region aware of how their fellow voters and residents are thinking, and as a public service to those who are in office. And what has changed so dramatically, I think, is a couple of the ascendant issues. Obviously, homelessness has been on the rise for years on end. However, seeing crime and then the cost of living creep into the upper tier issues have become evident to us. And I think for those who do advocacy work like we do in the business community, that is just sending the message for us. The difference in this year's poll to past polls is that the focus area of elected officials should be no longer in question. That the prioritization of what they should be spending their morning, noon, and night focused on are these areas. There's just such absolute clarity that it's provided a sense for us, in a way, clarity on the work that we do, our advocacy efforts. So I think it's just a message to those in office and that do policy work that they should know what their priorities are and where they should be focusing their attention on.
John, the poll surveyed voters living in Portland and in the Tri-County area. Do voters living outside of Portland share the same concerns of Portlanders?
They do. They're not always quite as intense, but they do. And that's something to be thoughtful of. This survey was of the region, and we did an oversample in the city of Portland to ensure that we had good representation there. But these challenges spill out beyond the city limits of Portland. So whether you're in Clackamas or Washington County, some of these rising concerns about homelessness, crime, cost of living are present there too. Perhaps not as intense, but absolutely there's consistency across the region.
John, in your opinion, what does the poll indicate for this year's Portland City Commissioner elections? We have 2 commissioners, Joanne Hardesty and Dan Ryan, both up for re-election. What does this say?
Well, both. If you're an incumbent, this is a difficult environment to be in, for sure, right? Voters are looking for change. They're frustrated about the status quo, and so absolutely. That's a challenging environment for incumbent. I would, say to anybody running for office right now, looking at these numbers, is that being able to address these persistent and high-level concerns with voters is going to be a priority number one, and voters are going to demand it. And so, this is information that I would encourage city Portland or commissioners running for re-election or challenging them to take seriously and have plans to address.
Andrew, just Portland voters responded to whether the city's commission form of government should be changed. Right now, there's a mayor and 4 city commissioners. The commissioners are elected at large, not by districts, and it's up to the mayor to decide what bureaus he and the other commissioners will supervise. Commissioners can be appointed to bureaus they have little or no experience in running. In the past, voters wanted to keep this form of government, but that may be changing, right?
Yeah, and we're the last major city in the nation that has this type of government. And I think it's also clear that voters are aligning the type of government that they have with whether or not they believe this government is being successful in delivering core services. And so I think a lot of what you're feeling in this sentiment is that the system itself is no longer serving our basic needs. And that's evident to anyone who walks around our streets that sees a lack of cleanliness, public safety. Those are really baseline functions of government. So what we're receiving, we've been seeing this for a number of years, is that the system of government itself, voters are identifying, as well as the business community, that it is no longer functioning or serving the residents of this region. It needs to be changed and changed dramatically. It's been around for over 100 years at this point in time, and it just no longer serves the size, scale, and need of our city. And there is a really outstanding effort underway. The Charter Commission that has been impaneled is doing great work right now, doing a lot of inputs from community members. And the other piece of this is how clear voters are and that they do want this to be changed. They want greater representation. They want to get rid of this legislature and CEO in one package, where you have 5 individuals, each of them represent 20% of the vote at any given time on the city council. There's a lot of things that are built into this survey that voters, as well as those in the business community, identify as being functionally not capable of supporting basic services anymore. And that delivery that cities are expected to do and expected of its residents to deliver a good quality of life, which has been for how long the hallmark of this region is good quality of life. So a lot of this is built into charter reform and needing to change the form of government so we can improve that quality of life that we've become so accustomed to and frankly let slip away over the past few years.
Andrew, what have you heard from city officials regarding this poll? Anything at all?
You know, we've seen a huge spring to action. Actually, today you would have noticed that the mayor has started to roll out a series of urgent emergency actions related to homelessness. And we don't know the full depth and detail of those actions, but what we do know is that they reflect a dramatic shift in the urgency. And I think they've been seeking that pathway. And so to see the responsiveness out of City Hall to the way that voters are feeling is an encouraging sign. Their ears perked up, and they've been working on some of these core issues for a long time, but you're seeing the acceleration of those plans. That literally happened this afternoon. So I think what we're seeing is this sort of action that people want and a dramatic shift from the status quo. And at a minimum, we know that there's efforts underway and people are trying to do dramatically different things. And that was just announced today. So I think the impact of this information, the way that voters are feeling, has been swift and it's been responsive, which is what you want to see from your elected officials.
Thank you both for being on the program. We appreciate your time very much.